Hello and welcome to the Worst Podcast. I'm your host, Alexander Wilcox, and today we're going to be talking with Zuzu. What's up, Zuzu?
What's up? How are you?
So I've heard a lot about you. I'm mixed media artist, does some mural, does some stuff with ACL. Give me a little bit of your background.
Sure. So I have been in Austin for 23 years. I've been a creative artist for 15 of those years. And my background comes from street art and graffiti. Happy to dive into all those fun stories. And started painting 15 years ago and have just been doing the damn thing ever since. Mostly large scale murals. I love spray paint. I love painting really large. But I love anything creative. So when people reach out and they want a canvas or there's a gallery show, I'm down to do that. I love mixed media, collage work. I love just like getting messy and getting creative.
So when did you first find painting? Because like classic art for a lot of people is super scary because it is so, by being that simple, it makes it that much harder to do because of brushstrokes and all that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I was always into art. I think some people are like born into it or, like even as a
Definitely.
kid.
I had to find my way.
Yeah, I definitely found my way, and it was through graffiti and street art when I was in the 9th grade. So beginning of high school, I got really, really into it. And at that time, it was really just an admiration for the culture and the scene here in Austin. So I was, going to art parties and photographing street art and like following around my friends who actually did graffiti and painted. And I did that for a really long time, which was really fun. And I still love photography. I still love just going out into the world and looking at art and finding street art. Like that's part of the fun of it all for me. And then when I was, I guess like 18, 19, somebody put a can of spray paint in my hand and said, let's go try. So I went under a bridge and painted for the first time and just absolutely fell in love. I was not quite as good at that time. It definitely took some time and some
Didn't have
practice.
your can skills quite yet.
I did not.
It is not forgiving at all.
It's pretty challenging. There's a lot of can control, and a lot of like little, things to note while you're doing it that you just have to learn as you go, or somebody tells you. But there's not a ton of people like teaching graffiti out there, or spray painting.
Typically, I mean, I've heard like you have to learn to do your tags, and once you're good at tags, then you go up to throwies, and then up there to what's the next level? It's like,
then it's like a piece or like a bomb. Like there's like all these. Yeah. There's a flow. I didn't quite make it that far. I got really into it, and I was, doing some illegal stuff and doing larger pieces.
Well, it's only street art, or it's only graffiti if it's illegal. Otherwise, it's street art.
Yes. It can still be graffiti style, I think, but I have a lot of respect for that culture and coming from that. But I went from painting in the streets and like painting graffiti pieces into more traditional canvas work and into large scale murals. And so I would definitely consider myself more of like just a visual artist or muralist at this point, but that is like my roots and my
I get that.
love.
Once you start to play with more than one medium, you're like, am I wholly that one thing? Like
Yeah.
I'm a camera operator, but I write, I do this, I sing, I do other things. So it's like pegging one feels like wrong.
Yeah, it's much easier just to say I'm a creative and like
That's what I've gone
cover
with
all
now.
the things, because I love being creative in like what I wear, in my hair. Like it can be anything. Like it doesn't have to be. I don't think artists have to say I do this one thing.
Yeah, and I always felt more comfortable with the tag of creative as opposed to artist, because when I've met, I always call them the capital A artists, which I felt are people that are way too into themselves and their own work. And the coolest, best artists I've ever found or met are into the things around them, not just themselves.
Right. Yeah. Humble is cool.
So what's the first piece of street art that like really resonated with you? I grew up in San Diego. I've heard you spent some time there as well. And like for me, it was like Chicano Park. I got to see so many different like Mayan and Aztec style murals, and I love that stuff. So when I moved here, I got to see pretty much like an iteration of a similar kind of style.
Very cool. Yeah, I was born in San Diego, and I moved a lot until I got here to Austin. So I still love California. But I would say, here in Austin and being in high school and being really into graffiti and street art, like I was into what was around me, which was the same dudes that are still creating and crushing the game today. So like, Sloke One, Mez, those are definitely my two favorites. And I've been watching them since I was 19 years old. And now I get to do shows with them, and I get to curate
really
shows and include them. And, like at this point, we're all homies. Like I've done like a collab show with Sloke. And it's just really cool to to watch somebody that's been creating since like the 80s that's still doing it and watching their style morph like simultaneously as my style is morphing. I'm just like, a couple decades behind.
Oh, well, art imitating life, imitating art, and doing the recursion
the
of
cycle.
it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Mike Giant, who's just moved to San Diego, and like I've gotten to watch his stuff grow like crazy.
Yeah.
And even in fun fact, in the 90s at the X Games, I got one of the original Shepard Fairey Obey stickers.
Cool.
Like apparently I shouldn't have stuck it anywhere. It could have been worth a lot.
You could have kept it. That's okay though.
So, what was your first experience with doing Web3? I've heard, the digital world is so much different than the physical, and once we start getting into digital art, it's an ocean.
Yes. That's a very good way of putting that. So I would say, honestly, I'm still getting into it.
Of course.
Like I've dabbled in it. I've created my first NFT. Happy to talk about my project with American Express and creating digital POAPs, which have all been really fun and exciting. But it is definitely an entirely different world than what I am used to. There's something for me that's like very romantic and dope about physical artwork in the physical space, whether that's like having an emotional connection or seeing the texture.
I like the texture of a painting. I like to get it on the side of it as much as possible so I can see the 3D.
Right. There's something, it's just different than digital art, right? And, even though I love creating murals, they start from a digital rendering. So it's not like digital art is that outside of my scope of
Usually
work.
you composite something together to figure out with all the elements you'd like.
Sure, exactly. And I went to school for creative advertising, so I was doing a lot of graphic design in college.
A lot of mood boards.
Yeah, a lot of mood boards. I'm still doing a lot of mood boards.
I do them now. I laughed, but they're super useful.
I do. I went years without doing them, and now it's like a really important part of my process, which actually makes things a lot easier for what I do. But I will say there's something, I don't know, it's like there's something like a little scary about Web3 to me. Like it's just very unknown. And although people can explain it and you can research online and like have conversations, there's like something in my brain that doesn't quite click. And so I'm interested in it. It excites me. I think it's very cool, but I wouldn't say I'm like fully immersed in that quite yet. I'm like easing my way in. I think even at the beginning, I was a little reluctant to like even be open to it.
Well, that makes sense. Like the market was kind of crazy, and there's so much volatility going on over the last 2 years. And truth be told, we're defining Web3.
Right.
It's really hard to say you're all in Web3 when we don't quite know what that is. You hear the term like metaverse being thrown around, and no one could really tell you what that means apart from something, Facebook spending billions of dollars on to lose money. So yeah, I had the same kind of thing. I got into Web3 doing some projects for Super Plastic and doing animated versions of their NFTs for like a higher tier. That was the first time me getting to do actual like art. So I was stoked at the ability to make something and just get to iterate for art's sake as opposed to having to tell a full story like I do with video.
Yeah.
So ACL, you got to do a POAP for American Express. Now, production art is how we all pay the bills. How was that process going through it? What'd you come up with?
So I would say commercial art is like my bread and butter. Like even all the large scale murals I do are typically partnerships with brands, which everyone can have their own opinion about it. But like I'm paying my bills.
That's the thing. I'd rather be working on things where they can't define 80% of it and I get to and pay my bills as opposed to sitting there making stuff and not having a living.
Yeah, I think there's a balance to both. I mean, I think it's important as an artist and creative to also create for the sake of creating. But, I love collaborating with artists, with brands, with companies. And so for me, it's like really exciting to be able to do that. So I don't feel like I'm like losing my creativity or my self-worth or any of that in the process. Like I actually feel like it's kind of amplified,
and constraints.
Yeah.
Constraints are great. You have to observe like what they need, their colors, their whatever, the thing needs to fit on. And for me, the blank page is terrifying.
Same. Yeah. And that's not the same for everybody. I mean, there's many artists that want a blank wall. They want to do exactly what they want to do.
They want to be everything with them from their head.
And that's cool. I respect that. Like that's
different strokes, different folks.
Yeah. I love it.
No, because it's painting. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. So working with Amex and Austin City Limits was absolutely fantastic. There was an amazing agency in between, and so I wasn't working directly with Amex, which is not uncommon for my
Usually you're
work.
with a marketing firm for the activation or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was an incredible team. They were like our age, super creative, super flexible. You know, even when there was some pushback from Amex and they were, you know, at one point we had this design, everybody loved it. And then they wanted me to like mute the color palette, which is so not
You want to take my saturation
my
away?
thing. Yeah. And so, you know, I had to like respectfully push back and say, hey, like, it just doesn't vibe with my style. We're like losing the quality of this artwork. And so
Whoops, I got a call there. Don't worry. Oops.
it's all good.
Yeah, well, and it's always hard to you want to make the thing that you think is correct, but you also need to fulfill the brand guidelines. And sometimes it's hard to know when you should or shouldn't push back, but it sounds like you had the people you're working with directly help you do that. It can be rough when it's just you and a major brand.
Totally.
Because you feel so tiny and it's like, I just want to make you happy. I don't want to like have too much concern with making sure I'm seeing my vision of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful like balance and like, again, like collaboration in taking brand elements and, you know, their color palette, their mission for Austin City Limits and that activation. Like there was a whole vibe of that whole activation. It was a 2-story building and this mural.
That's right. Yeah.
It was massive. So this mural was one piece. The POAPs were a separate piece and they had all this other stuff going on. And so to find that balance of, you know, staying true to my art and my vision and also blending it with what they want can be really challenging. But for me, it's super fun and I love that challenge. And I do not have a problem pushing back respectfully and professionally, of course. But, you know, I'm happy to like make things work. But at some point, like it's a little too far. Like when it moves too far from like your original style or vision, like you just have to let people know what the deal is. So
I've fired a client before. Like there are times when you're being pushed so far away from what you think is correct that you're like, this isn't mine anymore.
Right.
And it's a problem of the suits at times where they look at the creative and they go, now I can be creative.
Yeah.
And they want to effectively just grab my hand and do it. And it's like, that's not necessarily like the best case scenario for getting the best work.
Yeah, and it's okay to do that. I've definitely walked away from projects and like fired a client, if you will,
Yeah.
or passed it off to a different artist. But, you know, I've been on projects where it went so far and I said, you know what, it's not me and it's also not fun anymore. And although it is a job, like I still want to have fun while I do it.
We still have artistic integrity, and you have to care to
to
do a creative venture.
To do good work.
Otherwise,
yes.
it will look representative of how much effort you put in.
Yeah, it was a super fun project. And the POAPs were really new for me. I had never even heard of a POAP.
Yeah, they're like badges for events.
Yes, it's very cool. When I was in Miami Art Basel, we collected one when we were there, and I was like, I've got the app. I know how to do it. I like felt so special. But yeah, I got to create. It originally was 6 POAPs, and then we ended up making a 7th one. So if you went to ACL and you visited Amex, the Amex Lounge, you collected your POAP for that day.
Okay.
Each one was a different, like Texas Botanical with all my colorful.
Was one of them a bluebell?
Bluebonnet, yes.
Or bluebonnet, that's right.
Of course, they wanted the
had to be the state
bluebonnet.
flower.
Yes, of course. And but they let me get really colorful and like really funky with it. And you'd go in and you'd collect it. And then if you collected all 6, which I went to ACL all 6 days to get these POAPs, obviously. But
I want to collect the things I made.
Yeah, it was a lot of ACL, but you got a seventh one if you got all 6. So my friends and I
yeah,
all
it's like
got,
the all-stars area.
yes, the extra one. So it was really cool to learn about something new, like in the Web3 space. I had never heard of a POAP. I think it's a pretty dope concept.
Yeah, you went from not knowing what it was to doing it in probably, a few months or something?
It was like a month. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was pretty quick. So super fun.
That leads in perfect. You're mentioning Art Basel. So you just got back. That's in Miami for everyone who doesn't know. I didn't get to go this year, but I got to know, how was it? What was the sitch? You've been before, right?
Yeah, this was I want to say maybe like 4th or 5th year going to Miami Art Week. And it's always different. It's always a blast. I usually go with people who haven't been, so it's extra fun for me to like show people
see it through
around.
their eyes.
Yes, and like, you know, get to experience it with people who haven't yet seen kind of that caliber of art and that like mass like amount of artwork in a concentrated space.
Because it's like every kind of artwork, from murals to we were talking before, maybe illegally put stuff on the street. Did you see the ATM?
No.
There was an ATM that had a screen on top of it that would put a picture of the person and their balance.
Wow.
And it was in one of the art galleries. So I guess you could say it was like the flexing like ATM.
Oh, how funny. I missed that. We always do there's so much to do. It's like South by Southwest. You're never going to get to do it all. But I love going to Scope. It's an amazing art fair. Like all the best galleries are in there. You get to see like all these artists that, I follow all year with their new pieces there. And then Wynwood is just a world of its own. I mean, that is definitely more graffiti, street art, murals, more kind of like big parties and like brand
Yeah, well, you
events.
probably have like live paintings
Yeah.
and things like that, or
Yeah.
street art competitions.
Yeah, it's super fun.
So how you went last year, right? To Art Basel?
I go last year? Yeah, I went. Yeah, I went last year.
I've heard last year was really NFT and Web3 focused, and this
Yes.
year was kind of it pulled back a little bit and went a little more towards the classic. But how do you feel about that?
So last year there was a ton of NFT and Web3 stuff. It felt to me like a little overwhelming. Again, I love traditional
It was like that at
art.
South by last year too. It was
I
a little
agree.
too much.
I agree. It was a lot. And so I was excited. I mentioned that to my friends this year when we were cruising around the galleries, and I said it's really exciting to see that traditional artwork is like back in the forefront. There was definitely some digital stuff and some NFTs like peppered throughout the whole festival, but definitely less than last year. Like they hit heavy with that last year.
And I think that was kind of part of the problem of NFTs. I'm pro NFT for long term. I don't know in the short term with all the craziness of people buying and selling and prices. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But I think the ability to actually have a sense of ownership and a way of verifying something is really helpful for artists. As someone who's been a digital artist my entire career, everyone has always been able to copy anything I make, and I've just understood that. So I feel like NFTs played their hand as a person or an entity themselves a little too hard. Now we're going to figure out over the next year or so where the level is, because it was just every Tom, Dick, and Harry with art they didn't really care about, and that's what bummed me out. There's so much great NFT art.
Yeah.
And it gets lost on OpenSea or on the various places due to people are just like, no, this will have utility someday.
I mean, it's hard to find great NFTs when you're looking in like the sea of everything. Like there's so many, like anybody can put anything up there.
It's like reading the phone book to find one person.
Yeah, it's wild. So, in that regard, it can be difficult, I think, as an artist to be seen in the NFT space.
Makes the discovery problem even harder to a degree.
Yeah, but I also think, and a lot of what people tell me and a little bit of my own experience, but it seems like the NFT community seems pretty tight knit. So I've had friends who have said, just go online and look up these guys who are killing the game and reach out to them and ask them questions and they'll answer you, or tweet them or whatever.
Yeah.
But that it's a little bit more of a supportive community, which I do love about the NFT space for sure.
Yeah, the Web3 world always follows the WAGME, which is we're all going to make it. So that's the sort of the credo of Web3 people. So you've worked with a bunch of different brands before. What is one of your favorite brand pieces you've done?
Good question. There's so many.
Well, for instance, I know I did one. It was with I got to meet Matt Groening. Got to work with The Simpsons for Comic-Con one year, and that was the best. The art wasn't nearly as cool, but just the experience of getting to work with those people.
Yeah. Let's see, what are some of my favorites? I would say working with American Express. Obviously, that just happened, so it's very fresh on my mind. But that was a really big client, a really cool project.
It's a huge name, yeah.
Yeah, really big, very interactive. A lot of people got to see it. That was really cool. Locally, I have worked with Still Austin a ton, which is a local distillery, and I just painted the front of their building. We've done custom labels. I painted 2,800 labels for them by hand last year.
You painted all of them by hand?
Yeah.
Whoa.
It was.
How do you choose a deviation point of making them all unique?
Yeah, so I think in the past they've had more traditional artists, like brush artists, where they will go and they'll hand brush on each one, where my medium is spray paint, which does not work on something tiny. So what we did was they gave me rolls of the labels, which are white stickers with their info on it, and I pretty much covered an entire wall in my studio. So there was, I want to say 500 at a time, and then I popped a bunch of spray cans, which gives this really cool splatter effect, and then I went in.
Yeah, because all the propellant going out with the paint.
Yeah, it's as if you just kind of splattered a bunch of paint all over everything.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then I would go through and hand embellish. So each one was totally unique. And because I did it that way, there was almost these like sets of 500 that had their own like feel and color palette. So when people went in to buy one, they got to choose which one they liked. So
That's cool.
Super fun. And then they had me come in and sign the bottles and do poster signings. Like, it was a very robust project, and it's always fun for me to get to interact with the people getting the artwork.
Yeah, and that's a lot more like ownership and interactivity than they usually give an artist that's doing something for a
Right.
limited release like that.
Yeah, it was really fun. So I absolutely love that project. I love Still Austin. I loved working with Major League Baseball and Fender. I got to paint. I was like the Austin artist and painted a guitar and hand painted a bat that went into the Hall of Fame, and they did this whole exhibit.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So
That
you
was
have
super
a
fun.
bat in the baseball or the MLB Hall of Fame?
I don't know if it's still there. I think they did a pop-up.
But it was.
It was there.
That's still pretty cool.
I don't actually know where it is now. That was really fun. And I painted the ACL frame last year. That was really rad. You know, having like thousands of people take photos in your artwork is always fun.
So I've heard that you're let me take that again. So you are linked up with the Hope campaign. Is that the Hope Open Air Gallery then, or is that? Because I remember the original space that was over there, and I guess much to the chagrin of the people that lived above it, it's now been moved.
Yeah. So there's like a little confusion with that. So there's the Hope Outdoor Gallery, which is the space that you're talking about, which the guy who owns that property lives above it in that awesome
I didn't realize
castle.
that. It's literally that guy. Okay.
Yeah, and he actually is amazing human, big supporter of the arts. When that space started getting popular and he linked up with Hope Outdoor Gallery to create that space, he paid the property taxes. He would organize cleanups. He was
I didn't know any of that.
Totally supportive of that community, of that space, and pretty much gifted it to Austin for whatever 7 or 8 years that we were all painting out there.
I loved it. I always like to do a Warhol style, like a floor panel, and I did one there.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, pretty much everybody who paints probably painted out there at some point. You know, people were getting married out there. There was, you know, b-boy groups.
Oh, there's always a photo shoot going on.
Yeah, there hundreds of people a day were going there. So obviously a really important space in Austin for artists. And, you know, I think when he decided to finally build on that property, it kind of got a bad rap. But the truth is that he generously gifted that space for all that time, and it was time to do something with it. So the Hope Outdoor Gallery is now being relocated out by the airport. It is going to be massive and fantastic.
Better parking and less dangerous to be around there.
Yes, it will be very safe, tons of parking. It'll be, you know, full food and bev. There'll be a music venue.
Oh, that's great. So
Yeah.
somewhere you could legitimately be all day as opposed to trying to just figure it out where there's no services.
Absolutely. So it's been, you know, undergoing for the last couple of years. We are getting closer and closer, but it's a massive project. So I'm really excited for that to open and be available for artists to create again. There'll be legal walls, there'll be commission walls, there'll be, you know, places for international artists to come in. So
That's
just
great.
kind of the original vibe of Hope Outdoor Gallery just quite amplified. And then the Hope campaign is the like sister nonprofit to the Hope Outdoor Gallery.
Oh, okay. So they are related. Good.
Yes, they are. They are related. It was all kind of one until we decided to move into this new space, and so now it's separate. But everything we do is together. The nonprofit and for profit are totally working together. So yeah, I'm on. I would say like I work on both sides, but I'm on the board of directors for the nonprofit side.
So how'd you originally get linked up with them?
Painting out at the
Or I was like, hey kid, hey, what you doing?
painting out there. Yeah, I was painting out there, and Andy Skull, who is the founder of Hope, her brother and I met just through the art scene and music scene. He's really heavy
If you're
the
in one of the
music
scenes here,
scene.
you'll bump into everybody.
Yeah.
I was in the music scene here for a couple of years.
Yeah, everybody eventually meets everybody, and like it's one big family. So I met Chris, and he said, I need you to meet my sister. She loves art, Hope, all this stuff. And that was like 10 years ago. So
Wow. So one thing led to another.
Yeah. So I've been friends with them for a long time and pretty much started working with Hope like right off the bat. And back then it was just, you know, we painted a big mural for the Global Citizen Festival in New York City. And, you know, Hope hires artists to do all kinds of stuff. They're kind of like this really cool middleman to like help artists.
Because that's
be
something
artists.
that's really hard for artists is finding placement. Like gallery space is one thing, but if you're someone like a street artist that wants to be doing anything, it's really difficult to actually figure out how that business transaction could work, or just if you're doing it for free, getting permission from the city.
Totally. Yeah. It can be really challenging, and it depends where you are. In Austin, there's not like there's not a ton of walls. There's no like old warehouse district. Like you go to other cities and there's just like these massive blank walls.
When I
like,
was in Berlin, they have an old train station that got bombed out by the
Cool.
Allies, and it is all just everywhere.
Dope.
It's the best street art city I've ever seen. It was
Very cool.
amazing.
Yeah, I'd like to visit one day. But yeah, it can be challenging as an artist to find space, which is why the Hope Outdoor Gallery was so rad, because you always had a space to go.
Yeah, you could count on it.
You could just like roll up and anybody could paint. Kids were coming out with their families. Like it was a really special space. So I'm excited for it to be relocated, to reopen, and to be even better.
So what do you think about the digitalization of like street art or of graffiti specifically? Because I've heard some people that are of the opinion it's supposed to be temporary. If you digitize it, you're sort of stealing some of the authenticity that it had. I feel both ways about it. Like I've got a street art tattoo, so I'm like, I don't know, is this breaking the idea of street art? What do you think about it?
I agree. I go both ways. I can see both sides for sure. I love graffiti and street art, obviously, as I've said. And so I love being out in the world and like kind of like stumbling upon it even, you know, like it just existing and also being there for everyone to experience and see until it's not anymore. I mean, it's really kind of one of the really special parts of painting in public places, which obviously you lose that component digitizing or, you know, bringing it into the digital world. And so, you know, I think people can still find it and see it, right? It's almost like more people can see it if it's online. Like it can have a much wider audience, but it loses some of that like glimmer of being like a moment in time.
Yeah, because I guess the thought is it's supposed to be like a sand mandala. It's the process of it being made and existing for the moment as opposed to being something that like a statue that's supposed to be there like forever.
Yeah.
So what do you think about and the Web3 world helping artists actually make an impact or be seen globally? Because it's really difficult for your art on an Austin street to be recognized by someone in London or Paris or New York.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that is one of the amazing things about being in like the Web3 space as an artist. I mean, your audience...
The web is everywhere.
Yeah, your audience is just so much larger. And like we said, it can be hard to find people in that space because there's so much going on. But I think you're opening up to a much larger audience, which I love. I think you're getting into a different community, which I also love. And I mean, as an artist who creates a piece and then it lives somewhere and somebody buys it, or it lives on the streets and then eventually gets painted over, or whatever the story is, you know, it lived its life. Whereas in, you know, the digital world, it can live forever and it can be resold, and like artists can keep making money, which I find to be a really fascinating part of NFTs.
Yeah,
like,
anything I can do to get artists paid more, because that's
tough.
it's
It's tough.
It's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Take me through the process of how you made your first NFT. What was that like? I mean, it's so much different than making something that is physical.
So it was really fun. And for me, it was pretty random. I had a friend who was working with Mint Gold Dust and hosting artists creating NFTs. They were really excited about artists creating their first NFT. And then they were taking these to NFT NYC and putting them in these like big parties and shows and then auctioning them off live. So it had some legs to it.
So the full flow.
Yeah, it definitely had some legs to it, and it was an exciting opportunity to create an NFT and then also have somebody else help us get it out there rather than just creating it and putting it online. And so I said, fuck it. I made my first NFT, and then the cool part for me was, you know, instead of making a static digital image, I decided to figure out how to animate it, which was something I had never done before. And so I ended up, and nothing like crazy, but ended up making this like kind of like neon flashing moving art piece.
It's effectively what I did for some of my NFTs.
Yeah.
I took colors. We're just zooming through the rainbow effectively. So
super fun. But like in the digital space, I figured it's more interesting to see something with some movement rather than just like a static image. And
if it can move,
why not? Yeah. So that was cool for me. Like, you know, again, like getting into something new, into this like NFT space or Web3 space, like as a creative, challenging myself to do some new shit was exciting. So that's kind of like was my intro to it. And I ended up going to NFT NYC and not doing any of the NFT stuff and just like hanging out in New York for a few days.
Well, that's the hard part of events, right? Sometimes you just want to like have fun.
Yeah, I just hung out. There was so much going on, so I kind of did my own thing. But so that's actually the only NFT I've made other than the POAPs for Amex. So it's all very new for me. I think I'm excited to do some of these brand partnerships that I do and create the digital, digital rendering and then the mural or the product or whatever that is. And then like really working with these companies and brands to bring it into Web3 space. And like, how can we, take a project from being XYZ and like really grow it to have more reach, to have, to make more money, to, have more of an impact, like whatever, or all of them. But I'm excited to continue to experiment and like see how it goes. I'd love to make a collection of NFTs and see what people really vibe with and see if they sell and see what happens.
So what do you have coming up?
So I said I'm painting the front of Still Austin.
That's right, yeah.
Who I love. And I'm finishing that tomorrow. So that is
it's already in progress.
It's been happening. It's in partnership with a local mural festival called the Looking Up Festival. So I'm super excited to be a part of that. And I painted the whole front facade of the building. So it's like a massive warehouse. It's definitely one of the largest pieces I've ever painted, which is exciting.
How long does it take to do something like that usually?
So I did this one in 4 days. And that was
insanely fast.
It was really fast. I designed it knowing that it was large and knowing that it was on corrugated metal with windows and bay doors.
You'll have so much texture to deal with.
Yes. Yeah. And so it was not the most ideal wall, like material wise to paint. So I designed it knowing that. So it's very free flowing, really like oversized shapes, a lot of fades, bright colors. I hired 2 of my homies, Laced and Found, to come and help me, and they crush it super fast. So yeah, we did it in 4 days. And then I've got one more piece I'm doing tomorrow, and that'll be done. I'm really excited to showcase that and to blast that out. And then I have a big project that I have been working on for the last few months that I can't quite disclose yet, but it's multiple really large walls in Austin, great location, great brand partnership, and it will be much different than what I've done in the past. So I'm excited to like push the limits.
So you guys are going to have to check out Zuzu Social to know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
Yeah, coming soon, January.
So if people want to find your stuff online, where should they go?
So the best place would be Instagram. I'm not like super into the socials, but I do post most of my projects on Instagram at ZuzuB. And then I also have a website that I update fairly frequently at www.ihavepinkhair.com. And then I'm on Twitter, but I've tweeted like twice. So
I think that's kind of going downhill for all of us.
Yeah. I never know what to say on there. But Instagram is where I'm posting stuff and, sharing, on stories, like a little bit more of my personal life and like behind the scenes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of stories. I don't like posts as much.
Yeah.
I like the single take as what's happening.
Yeah.
Post it.
And then you see it or you don't.
Yeah, and it's gone in a day.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's like street art.
Well, thank you so much for being on. If you'd like to find out more about WRST Collabs, you can check us out at WRST.co or on social at WRST Collabs. That's WRST Collabs. Thanks for watching.